September 11, 2001. Two planes hit the Twin Towers. One struck the Pentagon, another crashed in Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people died in a single morning. Within weeks, the United States launched war in a country many Americans had barely heard about: Afghanistan. What was the mission? Destroy terrorism, capture Osama bin Laden, remove the Taliban. But 20 years later, America withdrew. The Taliban returned to power. So the big question remains: after 2 decades, trillions of dollars, and thousands of lives lost, what did America really gain? Today, we break it down part by part: military, political, economic, and human impact. Why the war started 2001. The attacks of 9/11 Fest were carried out by the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden. Al-Qaeda was based in Afghanistan and protected by the Taliban government. At the time, Afghanistan was ruled by the Taliban extremist Islamic regime that controlled most of the country since 1996. President George W. Bush demanded, hand over bin Laden, shut down terrorist camps. The Taliban refused. On October 7, 2001, the United States launched Operation Enduring Freedom. This marked the beginning of America's longest war, the early victory 2001-2003. At first, the war seemed successful. US forces worked with Afghan anti-Taliban fighters called the Northern Alliance. Within weeks, Taliban leaders fled Kabul. Al-Qaeda camps were destroyed. The Taliban government collapsed. By December 2001, a new Afghan government was formed under President Hamid Karzai. America believed the mission was nearly complete. But the Taliban were not defeated. They disappeared into rural mountains and across the Pakistan border. The war was just beginning, shifting focus to Iraq 2003. In 2003, President Bush launched another war, the Iraq War. US military focus shifted away from Afghanistan. Troop levels in Afghanistan remained limited. Meanwhile, the Taliban reorganized. They recruited new fighters. They used guerrilla tactics, roadside bomb seeds, and suicide attacks. The insurgency grew stronger year by year. Afghanistan slowly turned into a long-term counterinsurgency war. Nation building and democracy 2000 for 2010. The United States tried something ambitious. Not just defeating terrorists, but rebuilding an entire country. Billions were spent on schools, roads, hospitals, elections, training Afghan soldiers. Afghanistan adopted a constitution in 2004. Women returned to schools and workplaces. Millions of girls received education for the first time in decades. But corruption became a serious problem. Money disappeared. Local warlords gained power. The Afghan government struggled to control rural areas. Despite progress in cities, large parts of the countryside remained under Taliban influence. Obama surged 2009-2011. When Barack Obama became president, he called Afghanistan the right war. In 2009, he ordered a troop surge. At its peak, over 100,000 US troops were in Afghanistan. The goal: destroy Taliban strongholds, strengthen Afghan forces, create stability. Then came a major turning point. On May 2, 2011, US Navy SEALs located and killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. Mission accomplished? Not exactly. Al-Qaeda was weakened, but the Taliban remained active. The war continued. The long stalemate, 2012-2019. After bin Laden's death, many Americans questioned, why are we still there? US combat operations officially ended in 2014. Afghan security forces took over primary fighting responsibilities. But problems emerged. Afghan army morale was low. Corruption weakened leadership. Many soldiers were poorly trained. Some units were ghost soldiers paid on paper but didn't exist. The Taliban slowly gained territory. By 2019, they controlled or influenced nearly half the country. America was spending billions every year. Public support for the war dropped dramatically. Trump deal with Taliban 2020. In 2020, President Donald Trump signed a peace agreement with the Taliban in Doha, Qatar. The deal promised US troops would withdraw. Taliban would prevent terrorist groups from operating. But the Afghan government was largely excluded from the deal. The Taliban gained legitimacy. Violence continued. The exit process had begun. The final withdrawal 2021. President Joe Biden completed the withdrawal in August 2021. As his troops left, the Taliban launched a rapid offensive. In just weeks, major cities fell. Afghan army collapsed. President Ashraf Ghani fled. On August 15, 2021, the Taliban entered Kabul. After 20 years, they were back in power. The evacuation at Kabul airport was chaotic. A suicide bombing killed 13 US service members. America's longest war ended. The cost of the war. Now let's look at numbers. American service members killed approximately 2,400. Wounded over 20,000. Afghan civilian deaths tens of thousands. Total financial cost estimated over $2 trillion. This does not include long-term care for veterans. The human cost continues even today. What did America gain? Now we answer the big question. Destroying Al-Qaeda safe haven? Al-Qaeda central leadership in Afghanistan was dismantled. Large-scale attacks on US soil have not occurred at the scale of 9/11 fest since. From a counter-terrorism perspective, this was a significant achievement. Killing Osama bin Laden. The mastermind of 9/11 fest was eliminated. Symbolically and strategically, this was a major win. 20 years of education and women's rights. Millions of Afghan girls went to school. Women entered politics and media. A generation experienced freedom they had never known before. Though many of those gains are now reversed under Taliban rule. Military experience and technological growth. The war transformed as military tactics. Drone warfare expanded. Intelligence systems improved. Special operations capabilities increased. What did America lose? Now the difficult part. Financial burden. Trillions spent could have been invested domestically. Infrastructure, healthcare, education. Public trust. Many Americans lost trust in government decisions after years of shifting strategies. Veteran trauma. PTSD, suicide rates, long-term medical costs. The emotional toll remains. Taliban back in power. After 20 years, the original enemy returned to rule Afghanistan. This raises the biggest criticism. Geopolitical impact. The war reshaped global politics. NATO alliance cooperation strengthened. Relations with Pakistan became complicated. China and Russia observed America's long engagement. Some argue the war distracted America from rising powers like China. Lessons learned. Experts often say, nation building is extremely difficult. Military victory does not guarantee political stability. Local culture and governance matter more than force. Afghanistan proved that modern military power cannot easily reshape a society. Final reflection. So what did America gain? Eliminated the leader of 9/11 FAS? Disrupted terrorist networks? Protected homeland security for 2 decades? But it also spent trillions, lost thousands of lives, watched the Taliban return. History may judge this war differently over time. Some will call it necessary after 9/11 FES. Others will call it a costly mistake. But one truth remains. For 20 years, thousands of soldiers served believing they were protecting their country. and their sacrifice cannot be measured only in politics.